What's up, everybody? Rob here. So, I have a little bit of spare time today, and I'm going to be taking the opportunity to be talking about the Quasi War, one of the first conflicts in America's history. And it was fought against our greatest ally. Does that sound interesting to you? Well, keep watching. If it doesn't seem interesting to you, keep watching anyway, for I care not from whence the views come, only that they do. Alright, here we go. Okay, so the story begins during the American Revolution. Now, I'm not going to go into what happened during the American Revolution. You should already know that. Point is, eventually, the American cause gets the French dragged into it. The French and the British, they never really liked each other that much. They fought each other. The Americans fought each other. Point is, when the dust settled in 1783, America is a brand new nation. We started trade with France, and we also started trade with Great Britain, since that was actually one of the major pillars of the American economy. Yeah, it's weird you fought against your former colonial masters, but hey, money's money. You got to make a buck anyway. So, point is, United States, strictly neutral nation. We didn't want to get involved in European affairs, and we were happy, though, to trade with, pretty much anybody. So, fine. 1780s, things are going great. United States is trading with Britain. We're trading with France. Goods are going across the Atlantic. Money's coming back. Everybody's happy. Well, thing is, though, in 1789, things took a turn for the worse when the French monarchy lost its head, quite literally. Yes, I know Louis was executed later, but you know what I'm saying. French Revolution happens. France is now a republic. And, the rest of Europe really was not too happy about this. And, pretty much the entirety of Europe, for the most part, descended on France, trying to overthrow the newly founded republic and restore the monarchy for various reasons I'm not going to get into and aren't particularly relevant to this conversation. Point is, that's what's going on here. Now, as the United States was a major trade partner with, France, and France was our greatest ally in our war for independence, the newly minted French government, they wanted us to the United States. I wasn't there. But anyway, they wanted the United States to cut off trade with Great Britain because that was our great trading partner at this point. And that would help out the French war, the Revolutionary War effort. And the United States had a very strict neutrality policy, basically saying, we're not getting involved in European affairs. We're not going to not trade with anybody. We're not going to trade specifically with anybody more than another. We're not going to favor anybody. We don't want anything. You give us money, we'll give you goods. We don't care who it comes from. You want to fight each other, go ahead and do it. Leave us out of it. And France was, they weren't exactly happy about this. The Committee of Safety and the new revolutionary government weren't too thrilled about this, and they cited the alliance that the United States had with France, saying, "Hey, we're allies." As far as they were concerned, the treaty is still being upheld, and actually, it was under the monarchy. The United States, wanting to remain neutral, cited, yes, we had this agreement with the monarchy. You're not the monarchy. Basically, the idea was we're going to have neutrality at all costs. We really do not want to get involved in European affairs. Well, the French were not happy about this, and they started a naval war against U.S. shipping headed towards Great Britain. And during this time, in the early 1790s, around 300 merchant ships were captured, and some of them were actually captured and their crews taken and their cargoes taken in U.S. territorial waters, right off the East Coast. Now, this was possible because the U.S. Navy at this point was, let's just say non-existent. I mean, you had basically, it was non-existent. There's really not much else you can say about it. So, John Adams, the president at the time, decided to take a little bit of a diplomatic approach, mostly because you can't really take a military approach because there was no military to speak of. But in any case, he sent a delegation to France, but the French actually refused to see the diplomats unless they paid a bribe. And the diplomats just flat out refused to do so. We're not going to be bribed for, we are one of the nations of the world. You don't demand bribes to see, for an ambassador to speak to, officials. You don't do that. So they just flat out refused. And now John Adams did not want this information get out because they didn't want to cause a scandal with this. But he eventually did release the documents, showing that they demanded, the French demanded a bribe. but he replaced the names of the French officials with the names XYZ. Hence, it was known as the XYZ Affair. Well, in any case, once news of this got out, Robert Harper, who is the senator of Maryland, stated famously, "Millions for defense, not 1 cent for tribute." Now, that was oftentimes attributed to the Barbary pirates, the Barbary Wars. It wasn't. It was actually in relation to the XYZ Affair and the French attacking American shipping. But, hey, still, it's the basic principle that actually is still more or less the foundational principle of American shipping. Millions for defense are actually right now, billions for defense, not 1 cent for tribute. We do not negotiate with terrorists, etc., etc. You guys know the deal. So Adams and Congress, the government actually worked together on this one, and they authorized the creation of the U.S. Navy. Now, this wasn't exactly true that the Navy was created at this point. 6 frigates, which are medium-sized vessels, they are about 40 to 45 guns. The USS Constitution was one of these. It has 44 guns on it. So, about that size. Not quite a first-rate ship of the line like the HMS Victory, but, decently sized, moderate-sized ships. They were under construction. 6 of them were under construction, but the process was sped up at this point. And there was a general authorization for merchant ships and cutters, which are small coastal patrol crafts, very fast, maneuverable ships, to be armed and to be used by the burgeoning Navy. Basically, if it floats, if you can afford a cannon, strap it on there, have at it. So the Quasi War actually began in 1798, and the war was not declared by either the French or by the United States. Neither side officially declared war on the other. Now, the American Navy, such as it was at this point, was under very strict orders not to go on the offensive, but only to defend merchant ships or themselves. Basically, this was escort only. We're moving from one end of the Atlantic to the other. If we're attacked, fight back. If you're not attacked, do not do anything. Pretty straightforward, pure escort quests here. Easy enough. So, in any case, the first shots of the war were fired when the USS Delaware and the French ship, and I'm going to mispronounce this, the Le Croyable, Croyable. Apologies to all French speakers out there. In any case, they engaged each other on July 7th of that year, 1798. The French ship would be captured, and it would be named the USS Retaliation, which is kind of a cool name for a ship. Well, the war would continue, and on November 22nd, the second major engagement of the war, the USS Retribution, which is also a fantastic name for a ship, would be captured without a fight when the captain was approached by 2 French ships, and he mistook them for British ships, who were neutral at this point, and only realized they were French when they were basically right on top of him, and he was unable to fight or flee. Basically, he realized, oh, they're an enemy ship when they had him, bracketed between the two of them. And, it didn't really work out so well. It was kind of a humiliating thing to surrender a ship without even firing a shot, but, whatever. Kind of embarrassing, though. I just have to say it would be recaptured in June of 1799 by the USS Marac. No, not the Merrimack of Civil War fame. This is another one, but that ship from the Civil War that is much more famous would be named after it. In any event, this is pretty embarrassing for the U.S. Navy. The Americans would get a little bit of retribution for the Retribution. See what I did there? Any case, one of the French ships that was involved, the Le Insurgente, Insurgente, Le Insurgente. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce foreign words. Any case, one of the ships that was involved in the capture of the Retribution was caught by the USS Constellation, which was a sister ship to the much more famous USS Constitution. The French ship's mast had been damaged in a storm and was unable to maneuver properly and was soon captured by the Constellation. So a little bit of vengeance there, a little bit of retribution for the Retribution. From 1799 to 1800, American naval vessels, such as they were, basically, the frigates that were up and running at this point, as well as armed merchant ships, fought against French ships and privateers. Overall, it was kind of mixed results. Now, the only ship that the U.S. actually lost was the Retribution, and they did capture over 300 merchant ships and privateers. So overall, it was an American victory, or Americans were being victorious. There were some problems, however. One of them was lack of infrastructure, so voyages would be delayed. The new Navy had very limited port facilities, supply depots, etc. So this led to delays in setting out and limited their range and effectiveness. Basically, they operated mostly along the eastern seaboard and in the Caribbean. Further out into the Atlantic, if you were a merchant vessel, you were kind of on your own at this point. The U.S. Navy really couldn't escort you too far out. Issue was a degree of ambiguity when it came to orders. Like, what exactly was a legitimate target? Are they neutral or not? Basically, we can only attack if they attack us. That was the standing orders, but what does that really mean? Like, they're on an attack run towards us, or are they just moving towards us? Can we enter French territorial waters in the Caribbean? There's plenty of French islands, there that were French possessions. Can we enter their ports and attack stuff? Can we not do that? So a lot of, so it was 300 ships were captured. Most of them would actually be returned to the French because they were captured under illegal circumstances. Again, this was not a declared war. So it's not like, it's a prize of war. Well, we're not actually declaring war, and there's a lot of legal stuff going on there. Point is, overall, Americans acquitted themselves pretty well, but it wasn't exactly quite the slam dunk you would think. Well, in any case, by 1800, France was no longer ruled by the Revolutionary Committee or the Committee of Safety. Some Corsican artillery officer, he kind of took over the place, and he wanted better relations with the U.S., and more importantly, he had his hands full dealing with the rest of Europe, so he offered peace terms. This led to the Convention of 1800, also known as the Treaty of Montefortain, which is basically a clean slate in relations between the United States and France. The old previous treaties and treaties between the United States and France were declared null and void, and this reaffirmed U.S. neutrality and reestablished trade between the U.S. and France, and basically said that the United States is perpetually neutral. We will trade with anybody, and we will have good relations with the French, with the British, and with anybody else we want, and that we are not going to get involved. And the French accepted this, Napoleon accepted this, and the undeclared Quasi War, as it became known, because it really was an undeclared war that neither side really wanted to fight. They just sort of found themselves, fighting it. It came to an end in September of 1800. One of the most important results of the war was the establishment of the United States Navy. It had actually been established earlier, but this sped along the process and made official what was already in progress, but this was the final stamp of approval for the creation of the Navy, and it would play a vital role in the coming Barbary Wars, which are much more famous than this undeclared and often forgotten event in American history. In any event, I hope you found it interesting and entertaining. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button. More videos will be coming out whenever I get around to it, and have a good day. Or don't have a good day. Your adults have any kind of day you want. See you all later.